Karen called cops over my AC unit, but I don't even live in her HOA. When the cops pulled into my driveway, sirens low but lights still flashing, I thought they had the wrong house. Again, it was the third time in 2 weeks. I live just outside Charleston, South Carolina, in a quiet cul-de-sac that's half city, half swamp. My little yellow rancher, a fixer-upper I bought cash after a deployment overseas, sits a few hundred feet outside the bounds of a gated community called Sweetwater Oaks. Those 500 feet have made all the difference in the world and all the trouble. The first complaint was about my mailbox. Apparently it wasn't HOA compliant. The second was about visible weeds. But this one took the cake. Karen, the woman who lived 2 blocks away in Sweetwater, had filed an emergency complaint claiming my brand new AC unit was an environmental hazard. She didn't just call code enforcement. She called the actual police, all over a cooling unit I installed legally, on my own property, with proper county permits. I watched as 2 officers stepped out, clearly uncomfortable. "Afternoon," one of them said. "We got a complaint of a potential refrigerant leak." I laughed, and then I looked down and saw that my unit had been tampered with. The copper lines had been yanked, jagged at the edges, and a puddle of coolant shimmered on the grass. My blood went cold. That wasn't just sabotage, it was dangerous. That's when I heard her voice behind me, smug and syrupy. "Well, maybe next time you'll follow the rules, sweetheart." I turned. There she was, white sundress, clipboard, mirrored sunglasses. Karen, and she had no idea who she was talking to. Let me rewind a little. My name's Isaac Delaney. I'm a former environmental field engineer with the Army Corps of Engineers. I retired last year after 21 years of service and bought this home cash, no mortgage. No HOA, no nonsense. It's quiet, it's green, and it's mine. I chose this house specifically because it wasn't in an HOA. I grew up watching my father get fined for everything from having a flag out past sunset to parking his truck slightly askew in our own driveway. It made no sense to me then. It makes even less now. When I moved in, most of the neighbors were friendly. Some waved, a few dropped off cookies. But there was one person who never smiled. Karen. Her real name's Cheryl Langston. But everyone on the block knows her by the title she bestowed on herself, HOA Field Oversight Liaison. Spoiler alert, there's no such position, not even in her HOA. Apparently, Karen was the former vice president of the Sweetwater Oaks HOA until she got voted out in a bitter dispute over tree height regulations, but she didn't take that loss quietly. Ever since, she's been acting as a concerned citizen, roaming the nearby blocks with a clipboard and a Bluetooth headset, issuing warnings to folks who didn't even fall under her jurisdiction. That included me. After the mailbox incident, I filed a complaint with the county. After the weed debacle, I installed cameras. But now, with my AC unit tampered and coolant leaking, that was sabotage and potentially a felony. When I turned to face her that day, my hands were steady. "Did you touch my unit?" I asked flatly. Karen blinked, feigning innocence. "I don't touch things that don't follow community standards." I took out my phone and pulled up a photo time-stamped from the night before showing the unit in perfect condition. Then I pulled up the county permit, signed and sealed. The officers exchanged a glance. "Ma'am," one of them said, "he's clearly in compliance. This property isn't even part of Sweetwater Oaks." Karen scoffed. "That's debatable." I smiled then. The way you do when you know something the other person doesn't. Because what Karen didn't know, I didn't just install the AC, I designed it. I didn't raise my voice and didn't have to. The weight of facts is heavier than any scream. Karen, however, wasn't done grandstanding. "This kind of equipment," she said loudly, motioning to my leaking AC unit like it was a pile of nuclear waste, "poses a serious risk to the neighborhood. We have children here. Pets. Not to mention it's an eyesore." The cop closest to her, Officer Ramirez, I think looked like he wanted to melt into the sidewalk. "Ma'am," he tried again, more firmly now, "you have no legal jurisdiction here. This home is not within Sweetwater Oaks. You can't enforce HOA rules on properties outside your association." Karen tightened her grip on her clipboard, lips twitching. I'm not enforcing, I'm reporting. There's a difference. I step forward slowly, keeping my voice calm, and I'm filing a police report for property damage and trespassing. You see that coolant puddle? That's an EPA violation now, thanks to whoever tampered with my lines. Karen paled. Excuse me, I'm a former Corps engineer. I helped write the regional refrigerant containment protocols. You don't just accidentally break open a sealed unit like that. I showed her the footage. The infrared night cam had caught her silhouette 2 nights before her, and some guy in a golf cart with a logo that read, Neighborhood Environmental Safety Patrol. Another fake title. Karen's voice dropped into a hiss. That was a routine inspection, a citizen's safety audit. That was felony vandalism. I cut her off, and just like that, the wind shifted. The officer's tone changed. Mr. Delaney, Ramirez said to me, would you like to sign a formal statement? Yep, sir. And I've got surveillance footage, permit docs, and an EPA contact who's already aware of this harassment. I'll be pressing charges. Karen's eyes darted between us like she was searching for a fire escape. Are you serious? This is outrageous. No, I said, taking a slow step toward her. You're outrageous. The thing is, I wasn't just defending my AC unit. I was defending the principle that people like her don't get to invent authority out of thin air. And after years of seeing neighbors bullied into repainting fences and removing flags just to appease some petty dictator with a clipboard, I'd had enough. So I dug. That night, I started pulling records. See, Charleston County has an excellent public records system. I looked up Sweetwater Oaks. Their official boundary ends 2 houses before mine. No overlap, no shared easement, no legal footing whatsoever. Then I looked up their Articles of Incorporation and HOA charter. Interesting, their environmental compliance officer position didn't legally exist. Next, I went down a rabbit hole searching for complaints, small claims lawsuits, even code violations filed by Cheryl Langston. She'd filed 76 complaints in the last 3 years. Most were dismissed, some were pending, but 3 had resulted in fines or citations against elderly or low-income residents, most of whom lived outside the HOA, just like me. Karen was running a shadow HOA, and no one had ever challenged it, at least. Not properly, until now. The next morning, I called a friend, Trina Mathers. She's a local reporter who owes me one. I helped her investigate illegal dumping years ago when I was still active duty. I sent her everything. The footage, the audio of Karen admitting to an audit, the tampered unit, the list of fake HOA citations sent to non-members. Trina's eyes practically glowed through the phone. Oh, this is gonna make waves, she whispered. Give me 72 hours. 3 days later, all hell broke loose. The piece dropped online and went viral within hours. Headline: Fake HOA officer accused of harassment, sabotage, and Sweetwater Oaks scandal. The footage of Karen poking around my AC unit with a flashlight ran in slow motion on the 6 o'clock news. Neighbors who'd been too afraid to speak before they came out in droves. Trina interviewed at least a dozen people who'd received phony compliance warnings on official-looking stationery with no legal standing. A war veteran who was told to remove his flag. A single mom fined $300 for a play set that violated structure color rules. An elderly woman who paid Karen $100 to renew her landscaping exemption, whatever that means. It wasn't just petty, it was a pattern. Karen didn't show her face for a week, but I knew this wasn't over. Because if there's one thing people like her can't stand, it's being ignored. The sun was just rising when I heard the thump. A heavy object slammed against my front porch. I rushed out barefoot, expecting a package or maybe even retaliation. It wasn't Amazon. It was a dead raccoon, stuffed in a plastic bag and duct taped to a fake HOA violation notice. The letter read, "Unsanitary conditions, you've been warned. Swine's Sweetwater Environmental Task Force." I didn't flinch. I took photos, bagged the evidence, filed a police report, and that's when I realized something bigger was happening. Karen wasn't acting alone anymore. She had people followers feeding her delusion. And now they were escalating. The article about her had stirred the hornet's nest. Trina's report had cracked open a conversation that had long been whispered in backyards and cul-de-sacs that HOA power, real or fake, was being used like a weapon. And some folks, they liked holding that power. They craved it. Karen had become a queen in a castle of fear, and now that her throne was slipping, she was lashing out. But she made one mistake. She brought her war to my front yard, and this time, I wasn't just playing defense. The county issued a formal cease and desist order against Karen within 48 hours of the news report. The Sweetwater Oaks HOA released a lukewarm statement denying any involvement and promptly removed Karen's name from all official materials. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. The next week, a white SUV with black decals rolled into the neighborhood. On its side were the words, Sweetwater Security Detail Community Protection Division. No such agency existed. The driver, a guy named Mitch, ex-mall cop with a Napoleon complex. He walked up to my property wearing a utility vest and aviators, clipboard in hand. "You Isaac Delaney?" he asked. "Yup. You've been cited for unregulated installation of climate control equipment in a suburban safety corridor." I blinked. "What the hell does that mean?" Mitch looked uncertain. "It's on the sheet." I laughed, hard. "You just read words on a page like they mean something." I stepped closer. "You know impersonating a county code enforcement officer is a misdemeanor, right?" he stammered. "I'm not impersonating, I've got you on camera." I pointed to the Nest Cam. "And if you so much as set foot on my grass again, you're going to have a real sheriff breathing down your neck." He turned and walked off fast, but not before tossing the fake citation on the ground. I picked it up, and that's when I saw the name at the bottom. Not Karen's, her husband's. Karen's husband, Gregory Langston, was listed as the Regional Director of Compliance. I pulled up property records. Their house registered under an LLC called Langston Neighborhood Solutions. They weren't just harassing people, they were monetizing it. I brought this to Trina. She connected the dots, turns out. Langston Neighborhood Solutions had sent over 200 environmental violation warnings in the last year. About half of the recipients paid the fine. Most of them assumed it was real. Some even set up autopay. We were talking tens of thousands of dollars in fake HOA fees, all while Karen strutted around like she ran the place. And no one stopped her because no one knew where her authority ended. Until now, some filming, some arguing. Behind them, a county sheriff's vehicle pulls up just as a uniformed deputy exits. The tension is raw. Every face caught in the moment between truth and collapse. That confrontation, it was the day everything snapped. The sheriff's department had been watching the situation closely, especially after my EPA contact forwarded the refrigerant leak data. So when Karen showed up with her fake security squad, yelling about neighborhood environmental violations and demanding I remove my AC system entirely, the sheriff himself showed up. Sheriff Wallace was a calm man, tall, gray-bearded, Southern-born, and nobody's fool. He walked right up to Karen with a file folder in hand and said, "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to put the clipboard down." Karen looked like she might implode. "You can't talk to me like that. I'm acting in a civic capacity." "No, ma'am," Wallace said dryly. "You're acting in a fraudulent one." Then he turned to Mitch. "And you're about 30 seconds away from being detained for impersonating an officer." That was the moment it all cracked. Mitch dropped the clipboard. Another one of her flunkies backed away entirely. And Karen. She screamed, "I'm trying to preserve this community. You people don't understand. If we let him do whatever he wants, it's anarchy." The crowd gasped, because she didn't say people. She said him, and all of a sudden, the subtext became real. Because I'm not just a homeowner, I'm Black, and Karen. She wasn't just obsessed with property lines and fake bylaws. She was obsessed with control. The sheriff didn't raise his voice. He simply gestured to the cruiser. "Ma'am, you are being charged with vandalism, harassment, and impersonating a public official. You have the right to remain silent." And just like that, Karen's fake empire collapsed on camera, in front of the very community she claimed to protect. Karen didn't go quietly. As she was escorted into the sheriff's cruiser, she kept yelling about neighborhood standards, environmental hazards, the breakdown of civilized order. Her voice cracked, but she wouldn't stop. Not until the car door slammed and her screams were sealed behind tempered glass. Even then, she looked back through the window like she still owned us. The neighborhood stood frozen. No one clapped. No one cheered. They were stunned, not because she'd been arrested, but because it had taken this long. The very next day, the story went national. Trina's update ran with a new headline: fake HOA ringleader arrested in Charleston, alleged $40,000 scam unravels. Suddenly, our quiet street wasn't so quiet anymore. News vans lined the curbs. Reporters stood in the very same spot where my AC unit still sat. Half ruined, leaking coolant and justice. Neighbors who hadn't spoken to me in months knocked on my door with apologies. One of them, Mrs. Doherty, brought lemon pie and whispered that Karen once told her to keep her curtains closed or face a citation. Turns out Karen had been running her little dictatorship for years, and nobody stopped her because she looked the part, clean cut, clipboard in hand, voice like a PTA president on a power trip. But under that pastel exterior was something poisonous. The sheriff's department opened an official investigation into Langston Neighborhood Solutions. They issued a public statement advising anyone who had received a notice or paid a fee to report it. Within days, over 60 families had come forward. Retired couples, single parents, immigrants with limited English, they'd all been targeted. Some of the fake citations even threatened eviction if they didn't comply. Karen and her husband Gregory had set up a P.O. box and fake legal letterhead. They'd used fear and confusion to build a shadow HOA and pocketed every cent of it. They'd exploited the most vulnerable among us, those who didn't have the time, knowledge, or confidence to push back. Until now, I testified at the first county hearing. I brought the video footage, the letters, the fake citations. But I also brought something else, a binder filled with statements from everyone Karen had harassed. Stories of stress, embarrassment, shame. One woman cried, recounting how Karen threatened to report her to CPS for letting her kids ride scooters in the driveway. Another neighbor, a veteran like me, said he took down his flag after Karen called it a visual disruption to the color harmony. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about property. It was about control and who gets to have it. But not everyone was happy she got caught. A few diehards folks who once saw Karen as a leader started whispering that I took things too far. They accused me of grandstanding, of overreacting, of bringing the media into a private matter. I heard it at the gas station. I read it on the community Facebook group. There was even an anonymous letter slipped into my mailbox that read, "Some of us like the order. You ruined everything." So I posted back. I told them about the veteran who cried when Karen threatened him, about the elderly woman who gave up grocery money to pay fake HOA fines, about the immigrant family who took down their daughter's swing set because they were too scared to argue. If that's the order they missed, they could keep it. A week later, we held a town meeting in the rec center. It was packed, standing room only. I stood before the crowd, not as a hero, but as a neighbor, a man with a broken AC unit and a boiling point. Here's the truth. I told them, HOAs aren't the enemy. But when fake authority goes unchecked, it doesn't just hurt homes, it hurts people. It silences them, isolates them, and if we don't call it out, it grows like rot under the floorboards. There was silence at first, then one man clapped, then another, then the room roared. The county launched a task force to review all HOAs and any adjacent enforcement actions. They began mailing out letters to clarify property boundaries and remind people that only official code officers could issue citations. The sheriff returned to my house the following week. He shook my hand and said, "You kicked a hornet's nest. Isaac, I'd do it again." I replied. He smiled. "Good, because we might need you to help swat a few more." And Karen. She was out on bail, but the civil suits started pouring in. The DA confirmed the fraud case was moving forward. She wasn't allowed within 200 feet of any resident she'd cited. Her home was officially removed from Sweetwater Oaks charter. And Gregory, he ghosted. His LLC was dissolved within 72 hours of the arrest. Some say they moved. Others say they stayed and just never come outside. Honestly, I don't care. Because for the first time since I moved in, the neighborhood felt like it actually belonged to the people who lived in it, not the ones who ruled it from the shadows. I didn't fix the AC unit right away. I left it sitting there cracked, half disassembled, leaking a faint hiss of refrigerant like a monument to everything that had happened. Neighbors would stop, look at it, and shake their heads. It wasn't just a busted appliance anymore. It was proof. Proof that even something as simple as trying to stay cool in your own home could turn into a battleground when someone like Karen was watching. 2 weeks after her arrest, I got an envelope in the mail from the Charleston County DA. Inside was a formal request to testify at Karen's preliminary hearing. Inside the same envelope was something else, a copy of her recorded confession. She'd told the deputies she was acting in the community's best interest and enforcing standards the county had abandoned. But then, as they pressed her, she admitted she'd made up the citations, forged inspection paperwork, and accepted payments through her husband's Shell LLC. I just wanted to keep the neighborhood clean, she'd muttered. No remorse, no apology. Just the same obsession with control, twisted into something criminal. The preliminary hearing was quiet. Karen showed up in a beige pantsuit, hair pulled back tight, looking smaller than I remembered. She didn't look at me once. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I served 21 years protecting this country. I told the judge, and I moved here because I wanted peace. What she did wasn't just about faking paperwork. She turned people's homes into sources of fear. She made good folks question whether they belonged. The judge nodded. Karen's lawyer asked if I'd be satisfied with probation. I said, I'll be satisfied when every person she lied to gets their money back, and when nobody ever mistakes her clipboard for real authority again. Over the next month, something incredible happened. Neighbors started organizing not to gossip, but to rebuild. We formed a real neighborhood coalition, not an HOA. No dues, no enforcers, just a group of people with skin in the game and hearts still healing. We created a volunteer repair team, repainted a widow's fence that Karen had fined, bought a new flagpole for the veteran down the block, fixed up the immigrant family's swing set this time with bright yellow paint, just to make a point. And one Saturday morning, they all showed up at my place with a new AC unit, paid for by pooled donations. I can install it myself. I said, a little choked up. Yeah, my neighbor Greg chuckled, but not alone. It took us half a day, 3 rounds of lemonade, and a burned-out drill battery. But we got it done. By sunset, the new unit was humming like a summer lullaby. For the first time in months, I exhaled fully. Not because I'd won, but because we had. Karen's sentencing came down hard. 6 months of house arrest, 5 years of probation, full restitution, nearly $38,000 owed to the victims. She was also barred from participating in any community board, HOA, or housing-related organization for a decade. Gregory vanished. Some say he skipped town. Others say he filed for divorce. I didn't care either way. Trina's final follow-up went viral again. The title, The Man Who Brought Down a Fake HOA and Rebuilt a Community Instead. She asked me what I thought changed most. I said, the silence. How do you mean, she asked? I smiled. People used to whisper when Karen walked by. Now they wave when I do. It's funny. I moved here thinking I was buying peace and quiet. But maybe peace isn't something you buy. Maybe it's something you build. One truth at a time, one neighbor at a time, one busted AC unit at a time. This story isn't just about me, it's about us. About how fake authority thrives in silence. About how fear can spread faster than facts if we let it. But it's also about what happens when good people push back. So if you've ever been bullied by fake rules, if you've ever been told you don't belong in your own neighborhood, speak up. Tell your story, because justice doesn't start in courtrooms. It starts on your front porch. Now it's your turn. Have you ever dealt with HOA abuse, fake authority, or neighborhood harassment? Do you think HOAs should have more oversight or less power? What does justice look like in your community? Comment below, share your story. Let's rebuild something real together.